If you're a person who, chases rank, it's obvious.
Right.
And your stripes don't belong to you. They belong to everybody around you. Because if you don't know the baseline, if you don't know the intent, then you can't figure out a way to move the initiative forwards.
Welcome back to HeroFront, where we give veterans a voice and dive deep into the stories of grit, resilience, and leadership. Now today, we have an absolute legend joining us, Chief Master Sergeant Jason "Stone" Weiss, a leader whose career embodies everything this podcast stands for. Chief Weiss currently serves as the senior enlisted leader of the 673rd Healthcare Operations Squadron at the DoD VA Joint Venture Hospital at Joint Base Elmendorf, Richardson, Alaska, one of the largest military healthcare facilities in the Pacific. But his journey to this position is nothing short of extraordinary.
We need to understand that this family needs everybody to make this work, and everybody matters.
From his early days as a civilian medic out in Los Angeles, California, to leading elite teams with Joint Special Operations Command, Chief Weiss has seen it all. Now, in this episode, we unpack his leadership journey, how he fought through setbacks, learned the true power of mentorship, and why he believes that every airman, no matter the rank, has a voice worth hearing.
The pieces would communicate with each other and maneuver. That's the ideal chessboard, not me controlling them, but their intercommunication and versatility and adaptation.
We'll discuss the battlefield lessons that shaped his leadership, the symbols throughout his office with deep personal meaning, and the leadership philosophies rooted in history, from the Civil War to Tuskegee Airmen. We're also diving into the importance of realistic training and why having fun in the military matters more than you think, and how trust is truly the foundation of decentralized execution. And of course, we'll hit on some powerful book recommendations that shaped his mindset, including The Alchemist, The Daily Stoic, and a personal favorite of mine, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior.
You will default to your level of training. You will not rise to your level of expectation.
What's up, Josh here, and I got a quick update for you before we get back to the episode. Just give me 30 seconds of your time because there's two things that I just have to say to you. And the first is just a tremendous thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to us, and it really is a dream come true to not only be sharing the incredible stories of these guests, but to then inspire so many of you listeners. It has become my life's purpose, and I cannot thank you enough for supporting me and so many others on this journey of positivity. But secondly, it's a dream where I feel like we are just getting started, and the sky is the limit. I am so excited to see where this goes, and I'm so blessed to have you on this journey. And if you appreciate this message, if you appreciate what we do here at the HeroFront podcast, please follow us on this app. Hit subscribe. Now, if you do that, here's the promise that I'm going to make to you. I am going to do everything in my power to make this show as good as I possibly can now and going forward. We're going to deliver the guests that you want me to speak to. We're going to have the topics that you want to hear about. And of course, we're going to keep doing all the things that you've always loved about the podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now let's get back to the show and let's get after it. I'm talking with Chief Jason Weiss here. And by the way, we were talking about UFC fighters before. There's a UFC fighter who looks just like you.
Yes.
I can't remember his name.
I don't want to say Wanderlei Silva. I know who you're talking about.
He's in movies.
I get compared to him often. And and I've been mistaken for a UFC fighter, and people say I look like one. Don't look like a successful one, but look like one. And
no,
I've gotten that a few times.
You've got that extra gene of masculinity.
The
like,
Cro-Mag.
You just look like a beast. Like you do look tough. I'm not gonna lie. When I first saw you for the first time, I was just going to the ER to get the animal bite log, and I see you with a group of people. Maybe you just got there. You were touring something, and I was like, "Who is that?" I was like, "He's not a medic. There's no way. Like that guy's got to be like special forces or something." Like, And then I saw that you had medic stuff, and I was like, what the? Like, that guy's got a story. Like, I just know he's got it. Like, he is not a normal medic. like an admin guy.
Who let this guy out of the cage?
I think you were a senior then, too.
Yeah.
So
I got here as a senior.
You got here as a senior, and now you're a chief, so congrats on that.
Thank you.
No surprise there.
Well, that's very nice of you. You surprised me.
Like, if you weren't a chief, then I have no chance in hell. Like,
it's surprised. I was the most surprised person in the room.
Well, I'm glad you're humble about it. But none of us are going to be humble. We all know, you're the guy to get it, to lead us. So just want to say congrats on that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
So typically I come in with some categories, some plans. We forgoed that, but I still do have the Hero's Gauntlet. So that's 3 random questions that I ask at the beginning. Okay. Now, today is tech release day, right? Today's the day people find out, did they make it? Did they not? So you have a small group of people who are, feeling on top of the world right now. Yep. You also have a group of people who are questioning that whole year and what they could have done better, etc. I was hoping you could tell me a time where you were convinced you had it on lock. You were gunning for it. You felt good about it. You were ready, but you did not get it.
I gotta tell you, looking back, I don't think I ever didn't make rank and I felt I was ready for it. Like I was robbed of it or anything. I look at it through, I always say like, okay, you get your, usually the results are sometime middle of the week or towards the end of the week. So you get that, I allow myself those few days to throw my pity party. Right. And then I reframe my thought process and say, well, what did I miss? Where am I missing? Where's my soft points? And I'll usually take my package, release it, send it to some people who I confide in with, all over different AFSCs and everything. Hey, what are you guys seeing? Like, what do I need to be doing? And like, I remember the first or second time I tested for master, I missed it by 9. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm good. Same course and speed, continue on. And then the next year I missed it by 60. Oh my God. And it was and that's when we were testing the PDG and SKT. So it was like mathematically impossible for me to make it.
That's the worst.
And so I was like, there was no chance I could have made. So I was like, how did that happen? So same thing, threw my pity party for a couple of days and then brought my package to a couple of people, had them look at it. And you get all kinds of, anytime you get, 5 different people in a room, you're going to get 5 different opinions. Oh, you should do this, you should do that. And, but I just kept going and I'd ultimately come to a point, like, obviously I may think I'm ready or I felt like I should have had it, but somebody else saw something differently. So I need to adjust my fire and kind of figure out where I'm lacking, where I need to round myself out and go. And I think it took me 2 to make staff. I made tech the first time, which I don't even know how that happened.
Oh, wow. You're one of those guys. Actually, no, I was one of those people too.
Yeah, but it took me several times to make master. It took me a few times to make senior, a few times to make chief. So it was like, that was just, I don't know, maybe a fluke. And you always think you're like, oh, they're going to, was that right?
There's nothing, actually, the biggest curse is making a rank your first time. It was for me. I made tech my first time. I told everyone I was going to do it. Everyone's like, that's not possible. That's the hardest rank. And then I did it. Yeah. And then I was like, I got this. Like, that's where the curse came in. Like, I know how to do this now. You apply the same concept. And then I fell short, but like tremendously short. And I was like, but that worked before. Like, what's happening? So I think it's a bless and a cursing, or a curse and a blessing. For that reason, you might think you had it figured out. But really, things change, the role changes, the responsibility changes, and you suddenly could be behind thinking that you were ahead. That was me going into master.
Yeah, I was opposite on that. When I went into tech, I pretty much knew I wasn't going to make it because I knew it was the hardest rank, and it was my first swing at it, and I just wanted to get a good look and a decent score, so I kind of had some sort of baseline to look at, where if I thought I did great and I missed it by a ton, then I'm like, oh, obviously I got to change the way I do things. But I was just hoping to get a decent score so I could look, have a good baseline, and figure out what I need to do the following year to make it.
Right. You were telling a story about when you thought you might have made it, but it was the person next to you. Can you tell us that?
Yeah, I was working. It was first first strike at staff, and I was working in a hospital. And great friend of mine, Courtney Schleifer, I used to work with her. She was another med tech, and both of us were sitting in the nurse's station. And then came the congratulatory party. Everybody jumps up, and we're standing there shoulder to shoulder. And they walk in, they do the speech about getting promoted, and I'm like, oh my God, this is it. And they walked up and they shook her hand, and then they walked out. And I thought, did I not make it? Are they going by? Because her last name started with, well, at the time it was Gray, so it was G. So I'm like, well, maybe they're doing alphabetical order. Maybe they're coming back for me. And finally, the end of the day, I'm like, I don't think I made it.
You're like, hello, guys?
Anybody here?
Like, I'll stay an extra 30 minutes.
Is the colonel still here? Are they coming back? Can I leave? Or
So why that made me laugh?
Lonely day.
It is. Why that made me chuckle a little bit is because that literally happened to me. So I was filling in for the exec at the med group level, crushing it. I was like, I'm killing it. This is going great. Had a great year. And at this point, I was filling in for the shirt. So I was the exec, but I was filling in for the shirt. And that's the reason they asked me to be at this release. Not because I made it, right? I thought they were asking because I made it, not because I was the shirt. Yeah. So they're like, Sergeant White, you have to be there. You have to.
Oh yeah,
Come
so you're
on.
like,
yeah, I do
ready.
Quick mirror check. Throw a mint in. I'm like, this is it. I knew I had a great year. I knew it. And I go out there, and it's just one guy, and it's like no one knew him. He was just like working at a post office somewhere. Mm-hmm. He did that special duty. He just got back to his career field, and they were notifying him and no one else. Oh. And I was convinced I was being asked there to get that rank.
Everybody would think the same thing.
Right.
I would have thought the exact same thing.
So my stomach just dropped. I was like, it's because I'm the shirt, not because I made it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That was brutal. That was brutal. Yeah, I learned a lot of lessons about myself on my pursuit for Master Sergeant. A ton of lessons about what I'm good at, what I'm bad at, how to view life, how to view success. I was putting way too much on the rank versus what I could actually bring to the table.
Oh, absolutely.
And once you get caught up in that, when the ego is involved, there's only one outcome, and that's disappointment.
Yeah.
It might be tomorrow, it might be a year from now, but if that's how you're seeing things, you are guaranteed to be disappointed at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're a person who, chases rank, it's obvious.
Right.
And your stripes don't belong to you. They belong to everybody around you. So if you're personally chasing rank, you're kind of going against the intent of the stripes. It's like increased responsibility doesn't mean, yes, it's increased responsibility on you, but it means more people depend on you, more people rely on you. But counter to that is I got to do probably one of my top 10 favorite things I've got to do, and that was I was able to notify somebody they made it the other day.
Oh wow!
Which is just I would have to say it's probably, I don't know, it's different. I'd like to say it's better than making it, but that's not really a fair statement. But it's different, but it is truly elating. Like to be able to sit there and watch that joy wash over somebody, and they're just like, because that feeling where you get, you're like, oh, like you just like, everything falls into place for a few minutes, and you're just like, you're speechless. You don't know what to say. You don't know when to leave. You sit in a room, everybody's around. You're like, oh, can I go now? I want to call my spouse. I want to go tell my friends, and But that was one of the funnest things. It was awesome.
I could only imagine. I was just at dental yesterday and gave a young lady a shout out because I saw her on Facebook and made it, and I just happened to be at dental and I saw her. And I was like, oh, can I go in there? I want to congratulate her. And I was like, on behalf of the HeroFront podcast, I formally I made it like a whole funny theatrical thing. And she was like, oh my God, I know you. Yeah, this is awesome. So I didn't get to see the very, very special moment, but there is a lot of joy you get when celebrating others, The
funnest. It really is the greatest thing. And we, I put them through a little bit of a hard time, prior. I'll admit it. It wasn't like, hey, congratulations. I was like, hey, man, look, Oh,
so you came in with a different approach.
I did that thing. Yeah. I was like, look, evaluating the positions, and we're trying to allocate manning, with rank to positions, and it's just not working out where you are because, we need to find out what we're going to do with you. And I know it's me, but he'll remember it.
Right. And I was you made the good news like a million times better, right?
Well, I was like, it's the problem is you made rank, so you're no longer qualified for that position. You have to go to a different position. And he's like, man, I thought I was getting fired. Oh man, and big hugs. And I kind of know him, socially a little bit. We've gone out and done things. We did the golf tournament for the Chiefs group recently, and he's a great guy, absolutely great guy. So it made it all the more fun.
That's awesome. All right, second question. You're a mentor to an insane amount of people, I'm assuming, throughout your career. How long have you been serving?
24 years.
24 years. So in that 24 years, you probably had a tremendous impact. So my question to you is, who had the most tremendous impact on you?
There's been a lot, and I really can't single out anybody individually because I tend to look at everything. I try to look at everything as a positive outlook, and not like touchy-feely kind of stuff. But I can tell you probably like one of my best supervisors was probably not widely regarded as a good supervisor.
Really?
And the reason is because when you have a really good supervisor, it's so comforting. It's such a nice, productive thing to have. Mm-hmm. But if you have one that's maybe pulled in a few different directions, or maybe you don't feel like has your best interest in mind, like it forces you to really research, read stuff, and find out what's right. And say, hey, well, I think could be doing this, or I should be doing this. So it really forced me to educate myself a lot more instead of just relying on somebody else to give me the information. But I've also had some fantastic supervisors, commanders across the board who have taught me numerous things. I remember, shout out to retired Chief Robbins, Jason Robbins, who was stationed at Whiteman.
He knows me very well.
Does he?
I was the exec while he was serving at Whiteman.
Oh, is that right?
So all my flaws, he's well aware of.
So he and I worked shoulder to shoulder. He was the chief over at ASOC, and I was the functional manager over there. And I remember the first time I talked to him, I asked him, I was trying to get this initiative through. And so I was like, hey, what do you think? Like, I got this in line. This is what I'm trying to do. Kind of explain the whole thing to him. He goes, well, what's the regs say? And I was like,
he hit you with the old school line.
I'm like, I'm not really like a reg thumper. I'm more of like, I want to get things done.
Right.
And, but I misinterpreted what he was saying. Forward now to another initiative I do it. He goes, what's the reg say? And what I didn't realize is that he was teaching me, because if you don't know the baseline, if you don't know the intent, then you can't figure out a way to move the initiative forward. So if you're trying to get something done, what does the reg say how it's supposed to be done? And that's how you can move forward. So he's actually teaching me, but he didn't sit me down and tell me it was a teachable moment. He just let me figure it out.
Right.
And after a while, I was like, I see what you were doing there. And he's like, you got to know your ground zero in order to move things forward. And if you need to get something past a reg or something supersede, you got to know what the reg says, what the guidance is, and you got to function within there. And I was like, all right, thank you. Thanks for that lesson. It was a painful one, but thank you.
Right. What rank were you when that happened?
Senior.
Senior, okay. And he was already a chief at that point?
He was chief, yep.
Yeah, his career is pretty insane.
He's got a great career. He's a phenomenal dude, great mentor, very positive. And I really enjoyed working with him. I still keep in touch with him now. To this day, even now he's got the retirement beard and everything. He looks awesome. And I really enjoyed working with him. But, Carl Day, who I work with here, he was my chief prior to Chief Robbins.
Oh, wow.
And he taught me a lot. He was a great mentor to me. And there's his mentors across the board. I was over this morning briefing to the ALS class, and I was talking to him. I'm like, what's your idea of leadership? And so they gave me a lot of feedback, and it's good when you get into like almost like a trust circle where they can really hit you with some hard stuff.
Right. And
that's mentorship too, because now you hear from airmen, senior airmen, soon to be staff, a lot of them, maybe staff at the time, staff going through ALS, and they tell you what they think a leader should be. And that's humbling.
Definitely.
And it's also, shines lights on some of your spots because you hear what they want from leadership and they're telling you. So that's mentorship right there.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of across the board. I get it from a lot of different areas, and I always try and pull it out. So I really can't single out one person. I could just say that like everybody has taught me something in every establishment. I've learned. When I came here, it was so when I came to Eglin, I've been outside the med group for about 17 years.
What?
Yes. So in 2003, as an A1C, I worked at the time they had these positions for medics over at Flying Squadron. So I worked with an A10 squadron till 2005. 2005, I went to IDT school. IDT school, I got out. I went to survival school to be a survival medic. You're out in the field, by the way, one of the best jobs in the Air Force, hands down.
Wow.
It was phenomenal. Then from there,
I'm always jealous of you IDMTs.
it was a great job. I didn't really, I didn't really know what it was. And once I got there, I was like, this is amazing. I'm outdoors all the time and learned a ton went through a lot of survival training that they offer there, and was able to learn a lot. And the survival instructors are just phenomenal individuals, and everybody out there was great. From there, I got picked up for a specialized mission unit with AFSOC, and I went over there and worked. And so I was basically with the Army for about another 10 years, which was outside the med group. And then from there, I promoted to senior. And then I went to AFSOC MAGCOM as functional manager. And that's when my career field manager said, hey, I'm going to move you to Eglin. And I'm like, okay, ma'am, I haven't been in a med group in a while. And she goes, I think you'll be fine. And I said, okay. And so I came over here, and going on 2 years now, haven't fired yet. And, still, so I came here, and it was definitely a learning curve. Mm-hmm. And I had to really, really steep learning curve. And I had to come here and really learn about, being back in the med group and all the, systems in place and everything. So that was humbling. And so I learned everything from people here who have done careers in the med group, very, very smart and well-versed. And I talked to them. It didn't matter rank or time or anything like that. Like, hey, how do you do this? And what's this mean? And, and everybody would be talking. So it was, I learned a lot, just mentorship from people being around me, and, thankful that they were able to put up with me. Right. And they're probably like, what is this guy really a medic? Like, I'm like, I have not been, and I just go very like open kimono. I'm like, I have not been in a med group in a while. I need, can you just explain this to me? And everybody's really, really nice and helpful. So I appreciate them putting up with me.
Right. I mean, you've obviously, I'm looking around the room here. You've done some, this says Tech Sergeant Weiss survival medic. Yeah. I see, it looks like maybe you hanging from a helicopter there.
Yep.
You got some, you've clearly done some amazing things. And so to come back to the medic, I could see that being a culture shock because it's very regimented.
Yes.
It's very regimented, and you're kind of battling in your head, like, how do I use all this experience I have and let it work for me here? How do I bridge the gap? I think anyone coming back into a career field feels that dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So I think you've done a phenomenal job, though. Ever since you got here, I've been seeing you everywhere. It's like 5 of you on this base. So
That's really nice.
You've been crushing it. You did fine. So what? How do you hope to end your career? I guess that could be the last question out of the 3 Heroes Gauntlet. Mm-hmm. Is what's next for you? Ideally, how would you end your career? Like, what position within the Air Force?
So I've always had 3 rules to stay in the Air Force, and I was never one of these people who said like, I'm going to make a career out of it. I came in, I was going to do my 4 years. I felt that was my civic duty, and I ended up getting Germany right out of the bat, my first assignment. So that turned into 5 years. Tried to stay 6 years in Germany, but then they're like, no, you need to move on. Right. And I'm like, I'll stay here forever. I love this place. But I was never one of these people who's like, oh, once you pass 10 years, you have to do 20. I just took it day by day, and I just have 3 rules, and that's, it's got to be fun. I got to be relevant, and I have to feel like I'm impacting. And those are my 3 rules. And it's not one and done. It's got to be all 3. And I don't evaluate them day by day because everybody has a tough day. Right. But every month I look back and I'm like, okay, is it still fun? Do I still feel like I'm relevant? And do I have an impact? And that's what keeps me going. So I never really looked at like where I want to be as far as the next position. I just keep trying to move forward, keep trying to learn every day. And luckily that's always put me in good positions where I've learned and moved forward. My next job, I'll be going to Alaska in August as a squadron SEL. And so it'll be a 3-year tour there, and we'll see what happens after that. But
So
right now I'm focused on going there and just
You got a lot of
doing a good
time. You
job.
could go up to 30 years if you wanted, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And you're at 23,
Just 24 March.
24. Okay. So yeah, I'm actually kind of excited to see, where you end up with your unique, diverse background. I'm sure, you're going to do something amazing. You already have, but I'm excited to see like how you navigate Chief, because I call it prestiging. Have you ever played Call of Duty?
No.
Did your son play it?
My son plays it, yes.
So in Call of Duty, you have this option of prestiging. That means you basically start from scratch. Like you're so good that you can start from scratch and work your way up again, but you get a different logo. Like people know that you've turned your stuff in and you started over.
Like a badge.
It's like a badge.
Mm-hmm.
And I call making Chief prestiging.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as you make Chief, you're essentially starting over. I always thought Chief was like, like most people do, like, oh, that's the highest, like you're done, that you made it, cool. But it's actually this whole other world of, schools you could go to, different education opportunities in so many layers of maybe you're working at a schoolhouse, maybe you're the command chief of a base, maybe you're the command chief of an entire MAGCOM, maybe you are a legislative fellow. You prestige. You're opening this door and you're entering this whole nother world that I didn't even know existed till I started to get to know folks like you. So that's why I'm excited, because you prestiged.
Well, it was a very nice way of putting it. I appreciate that. You definitely, it's a great opportunity. And really what I view, most of the decisions that I have an opportunity to be a part of are direct relation on the communication I have with boots on the ground, as people at the flight level, airmen and NCOs who are running those flights, because I can only advocate for what I know what's going on there.
Right.
And like I tell them, hey, I'm not seeing patients every day, so don't let me make decisions in a vacuum. Like I need to know what's going on. What are your hurdles? What's the problems? What can we do to make easier? Because that's what's going to ultimately, I work for you. I got to make decisions that help you. And the more you let me know what's going on, the better I can advocate for you. Right. So it's like, it's like I have, between, the Airman and the hospital, I have roughly like 500 bosses. Is the way I view it. It's like I got to advocate for every one of them, and I need to try and find out what's going on with all of them to try to make things better for them. Definitely.
I think that's a great way to see it. It's a servant leadership mindset, which in my experience never leads you astray.
No, I think at the end of the day, a lot like medicine, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what, you're helping people, and so it's a good day.
Right. Absolutely. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about the relationship with your family at home, what they mean to you, because I've seen you on Facebook. I've met some of your family. It seems like you have a really special bond. So I was hoping you could kind of run me through, your home life and your thoughts on them.
Well, my family is definitely my lighthouse, and that's what keeps me going. I have a blended family, so I have 5 kids. 2 kids, 2 of my boys are my oldest. And one lives in North Carolina with his mom. He lived with me up until about a year ago. And he's living with his mom now. He'll be moving with me to Alaska. And my youngest son, who's been living with me for about the last 5 years, he's going to live with his mom. And his mom and I have a fantastic relationship. And it's just like, hey, like, let's rotate kids. They want to rotate. Let's rotate so they can kind of get a chance of living with both of us. Like, we have a very odd, people view it as a very oddly close relationship for a divorced couple, because like when I go visit North Carolina, I'll stay in her house. She comes out here, stays in my house. We still spend Christmas and Thanksgiving together with families and everything. So, and, the kids think it's cool, but I'm like, this is not entirely normal amongst people who are no longer married, but to them, it's totally normal. But yeah, I have, my kids are phenomenal. I would brag on my kids. They're both competitive jiu-jitsu fighters. My youngest son, he just won cage match in Biloxi recently, as you saw. I posted. Very, very proud of him. He's
That's amazing.
Super humble and a hard worker. And a lot of times people don't really see, that kind of ethic, and not really singling out him, but when it comes to like work, the jobs we do, the jobs people are doing every day, it's like we see these singular accomplishments that people have, but it's really not that. Like, with him sitting there on the stage in the octagon with his arm raised, everybody goes, oh, that's awesome. But they didn't see the months and years that it took of rehab, diet, exercise, missing out on doing certain social functions so he can train. He trains 2.5 hours a night, 5-6 days a week.
Holy cow.
And he's just a phenomenal athlete. And same with my oldest son, too. They're both just phenomenal athletes. But, we don't see that with, like, really anybody. You see, like, oh, look, this person won this award. How nice. But you didn't see the whole year it took them of just grinding it out and really getting there. So it's like we kind of see accomplishments as the pinnacle, but not many people see all the work that it comes up to that. But it's like family's everything. And I spent a lot of time, a lot of deployments gone, and missed a lot of their growing up. And so I'm kind of catching up on that.
Right. I mean, you definitely are. You're literally in their corner.
Yeah, my kids are like my best friends. So we hang out. It's like having a handful of your funniest best friends hang out with you all the time because they do the goofiest stuff and they're super fun, and they're old enough now where they have these personalities and they say these funny things and you're just like, no, son. It goes, actually, that is really funny, man. Like, well done. Or they'll say something, I'm like, what? Are you kidding? And it's hilarious. We just have a really good time. So
that's awesome. I mean, they're you. You know what I mean? Like, I have a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old. So I'm relatively new dad, and yeah, when they start to joke like you did when you were a kid, like my son has my sense of humor. Yeah. I'm like, that's me. Like, I'm raising myself. Like, this is trippy, man. Like, having kids is the trippiest thing you could ever do, because like there's suddenly these humans in the world doing things that weren't there before.
Yeah, and it's wild. This beautiful outlook on life. When I came through the gate once with my youngest son, Gavin, we rolled through the gate and he checked my ID and he's like, have a good day, senior. And he goes, do they call you that because you're old? And I was like, no, son, that's my rank. And so I had to explain it to him. So now when he sees me, I'll come home and he'll be like, hey, senior, how was work? And I'm like, don't call me that, okay? Because I know why you're saying it.
Right.
You're saying it, trying to call me old.
That is too funny. I just thought it was amazing that your family was like so in your corner, so wanting you to come on, wanting you to share stories. Like, I thought that was kind of special. Yeah. To have noticed like just how much they were, hyped about you coming on here. I was like, this is amazing. Like, I hope like my family acts like that when they, when my kiddos get older. Like, I really want that relationship with my kids, exactly how I see with you, with yours. So that's why I wanted you to bring it up. I just thought it was a really special bond that you had with them. It's something that we should all strive to be as fathers. And you've been a great guiding light for me as well, just watching what you do with your kids, how you interact with them. It's been great to see for me as a relatively new dad.
Yeah, there's really no playbook to being a parent. And I would say the most successful people ask me sometimes, they're like, if they're just having kids, they're like, well, what's it like? And I was like, look, don't take advice from anybody. You'll do fine. But I'll just say just love your kids. Just love your kids and everything will work out. You're going to screw up, but you love them and you're not doing it out of any kind of other reason except you love them. You make a mistake, big deal. They're okay. They're people. They understand it. They love you no matter what. And if you love them, you're always going to make the right decision because your intent is always in the right place.
Right. No, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, when I think of you, Chief, I think of, I pick up on vibes pretty easily. So I knew right from meeting you that you have done things, you've seen things, I could just tell. It's just something that I've always been good at. And I look around this room here, you got survival medic, you got that A10 up there. I see an airborne rocker.
Mm.
Like, Joint Special Operations University, but there's this huge gap when I think of you where I don't know like what all that is. Right? So if you were okay with it, I was hoping you could kind of tell us some of these unique experiences that you've had with your unique career.
So I was with, like I said, I got picked up worked with I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina with the Special Mission Unit, and I was under Joint Special Operations Command. And it's a support unit to forward operating units. And with that comes a lot of opportunity. And the opportunity when you get understand the operational environment from the battlefield, you get a lot of different types of training that you're afforded, that you're able to go to. And Airborne was one of them, and numerous other training opportunities. And it just gives you an open eye view of a lot of things, multiple deployments to different locations that were all learning experiences, and just a lot of exposure to different. So worked with the Navy a lot, the Army predominantly, and surprisingly, I think majority of my deployments, very few were with the Air Force.
Oh wow!
I think maybe 2 or 3 out of 8 deployments was probably with the Air Force. The rest were with the Army and Navy. Wow. So you learn a lot of different things. You learn different verbiage,
right? different cultures.
Yes, different cultures. Absolutely,
different jokes.
Yes. Well, yeah. So, like I said, being 10 years over there, my name was Air Force for 10 years. So you kind of end up like a little bit like because I noticed there, I'm always an Air Force guy. There was only me and one other Air Force guy in a unit of about 300 people, and so our name was Air Force. And you don't know, it's subtle, but it really kind of changes the way you talk a little bit because you have to communicate with the Army and Navy, and they have different communication methods. And then, so I was never, I was always the Air Force guy. And then I came back to the Air Force, but I'd been outside for so long, I didn't understand. It took me a little bit to kind of learn the lingo of the Air Force. So I always kind of viewed for a couple of years, I was like a man without a home. I was like, before I was like an Air Force guy in an Army unit. And then I went back to the Air Force. I didn't understand what anybody was talking about. So I was like, I got to find a home. I got to figure out what people are talking about.
That's like, you just had so much variety. It was like, okay, like, where do I land? How do I translate? This is, you had so much different experiences. It was hard to really identify yourself at that point. And like, what culture do I, embody today?
Yeah. Exactly. It was really fun, though. It's definitely a great learning experience, having that kind of exposure to, operational environment and how that evolves, and especially as we go into a very, tense era coming up here. Is I would like, I'm really appreciative of that experience because it helps give me an outlook, and I try and share it every time. With people, and they'll be like, "Oh, here comes Chief Weiss going to talk about national defense strategy and stuff." But I'm like, it's important. We
Isn't
need to
that
know
on your
this
desk?
stuff. It is. Yes,
that's one of those files right there.
Yeah.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
I noticed like you had this organized, and I'm sorry I put them in one big stack.
That's fine.
But you had them laid out. I knew they were important to you just by the way you had them aligned, on your desk, and then that was one of the documents I saw.
Yeah, and I try and take an opportunity, whether people think it's interesting or not. I think a lot of people maybe not, but I try to, I get opportunities to talk to people, and they're saying, "Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that?" And I'm like, "Well, look, let me show you one thing. It's in our national defense strategy. Like, it says we will do this, so we're just doing it." And they're like, "Well, what's that?" And I'm like, "Well, let me show you."
I feel like you learned this from Chief Robbins.
It was a lot of different input, but learning the importance of where we came from and what the basis of what we do every day. The National Defense Strategy is our Bible. It's exactly what the components are going to do to defend America and support our allies, and it spells it out. So if you're ever curious about what we're doing in the world right now or why, it's written in pretty plain English.
Right.
And, sometimes you can tie that, especially I did, operations up at a J3 level for a while. And if you want to go and, do a forward operation in somewhere in the world, you've got to tie that to, a local strategy, to a campaign plan, to the Air Force strategy, to the National Defense Strategy, and National Defense Strategy is referenced directly off the National Security Strategy. So if you can't tie all those together, that operation's not kicking off. And that's the first thing the general wants to see, or the COCOM wants to know, is how does this stay in line with our strategy and what we're doing? So it takes a lot of the magic. Having people thinking like, oh, we just over here doing all these wild things. Like, no, this is very strategic. Things are very laid out. They're very clear pathways.
No, I love that because, I shared a little bit about my story with you before we started.
Yeah.
And the biggest difference between me now and then is I had no purpose then, I felt no purpose then, but I feel a tremendous amount of purpose now. And that has changed my life completely, that feeling. And so that's why I think that's important, because you don't know your purpose. You don't know why you're doing this stuff. That's holding you back mentally.
Yeah.
Right. Knowing it is going to empower you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very important that, we share it, we talk about it, because it does answer a lot of those lingering questions that we have, that young airmen have in the back of their heads. Why are we doing that? That's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing TCCC? Like, what is that all about? That's crazy. Which that was a blast, by the way, that training.
Yeah, good. Well, we look at these things, and I really appreciated you sharing that story. That was really insightful. I appreciate that. It was a very touching story. I'll remember that. And when you mentioned about purposes, we always, I was trying to think about the purpose is more important than the problem. So like TCCC, how am I going to get all these days off work, and kind of get out here and do this? Well, the purpose is, to take care of people downrange. They did a study back in 2009 and determined that the casualties that were coming out off the battlefield, 33% of the tourniquets that were placed improperly. And
we're talking lives saved.
Lives saved. And it's still, to this day, the number one cause of death in the Korean War was hemorrhage. In the Vietnam War was hemorrhage. In the World War II was hemorrhage.
Wow.
In the war on terrorism was hemorrhage. So it's like this is important. We train it because it's important, and it's a strap with Velcro. So I always tell people, if you can put your belt on in the morning, right, you can put on a tourniquet. And what was even more concerning of it is that 60% of the needle thoracotomies that we're using, the chest darts, is they were placed improperly. And that always resonated with me, because this is a medical skill. So this is what medics are doing. That means, like a medical skill, 60% were put improperly at the time they did this. So that's when the Air Force really started to identify these gaps and really start to drive these. These are basics save lives, and you need to master the basics. It's like 90% of the stuff we do is basic operations, basic things, basic, dexterity movements that we need to do. And that's what saves lives. The other 10% is wazoo stuff, and it's important, but you got to master these basics.
If everyone had those basics down, that would eliminate that 33%.
We would hope.
Right?
We would hope. And there's of course there's a lot of variabilities to it. And I'm not trying to wave a magic wand or like cast, negativity on anybody saying like, because of this, you caused somebody's life. It's just saying like, this is just data. Mm-hmm. And this data is saying like, hey, well, we don't know if they would have lived or not, but we do know that these tourniquets were placed improperly and we need to fix it. And they did. And that's when they really started to drive down on TCCC and some of these basic medical skills and getting people back and getting that that battlefield mindset of like, we need to know this. So the purpose is much bigger than the problem. And that's what keeps us going.
And speaking of that, I tell airmen this really in any good opportunity, especially training environments, is that that was tested on me. Like I went to Israel as a TCCC medic, not as public health. I went with, she goes by Dr. Badass. She never wants her name said because she's that humble. So I went with Dr. Badass, an IDMT, a bio guy, and then me. And we were all there to support this doctor with the med bag and to know it inside and out and how to help that IDMT and that doctor with everything they needed right when they needed it. So we were doing drills in the dark. I could not believe, and I remember I was thinking, thank God I took that training seriously, because now it's happening. Like now I'm here. This is real now. It's all me now. And that's when you're really going to think back to that training and rely on it, because you want it to be muscle memory. Yeah, absolutely. You will default to your level of training. You will not rise to your level of expectation.
So if you train like crap, you're going to perform like crap. And that's why we need to be doing, realistic training.
Right.
Because, if you just go through the motions, you're like, oh, when the chips are down, I'll figure it out. You're not going to figure it out. You're going to default to your level of training because your dexterity goes, your critical thinking goes, and you're going to default to your level of training. You're going to default to muscle memory. And that's why a lot of these trainings we have to do under stress. We have to do under loud noise, low light, high intensity physical training that will stress you, because anybody can do it in a controlled air conditioned environment. But can you do it after, when you're hot, you're sweaty, you're tired, and you're hungry? Because most likely when you have to perform these skills, that's what you're going to be. You're not going to be in an air conditioned room and somebody's going to need a tourniquet. You're going to be in somewhere bad, and that person's going to need a tourniquet, and you're going to need to be able to perform it properly with very little thought, because you're going to have to think of 100 different things.
Right. Yeah, that training was the best I've seen. Really, I was blown away by it. The instructors that y'all picked were phenomenal.
So Joe Archangel.
Love that guy.
Yep. He's an AFSOC medic, his prior Army medic. Good friend of mine. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and I actually called out to him. He was living in Texas, and I knew we had a position open. I called him one day, and I said, hey, would you like to work at Eglin? And he goes, well, doing what? And I was like, awesome. And I go, hey, I got Carl Day out here too, who he knew Carl Day from being the AFSOC chief. And he's like, all right, well, I'll talk to him. And then we ended up getting him out here, which was a huge win. He's a fantastic individual and very knowledgeable and has a great history. And plus, he was a medic and his last name's Archangel. And
right.
Also the AFSOC annual medical exercise they do every year, and AFSOC is named Exercise Archangel after him.
What?
Yeah, which he's humble and he'll never admit it, but I got the shirt that says Exercise Archangel.
Unbelievable.
And it's named after him.
That is wow.
He would never mention it, but I'm going to tell everybody.
When I made a video on TCCC, I was able to make a video that, it can be shown to any med group can use it. Many med groups have. He's one of the people I interviewed. I made sure to talk to him, because I knew he's humble enough to avoid me. So I was like, you ain't getting out of this, man.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal dude. And I really, Joe's a special kind of human.
I tried to get Carl Day. The timing didn't work out by the time the video was due. But that guy I heard him speak once and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
He's a motivational dude.
I could not believe what I was hearing. I was like, I feel like I should be paying this guy for, this is crazy. Like the stuff he was coming up with, he's a natural at that.
He's a phenomenal energy and he just gets it. He understands it and he's got no off switch. Right. That guy is just in fifth gear all day. And I just look up to him and I talk to him frequently, or either for feedback, like, hey, how things are going, or sometimes I need to bounce things off him. He's been doing it for so long. I'm like, hey, what do you see here that I'm not seeing? And he's very blunt. Right. And I definitely rely on him for one of the many I rely on for feedback.
Definitely. Yeah. He's one of those people you meet and you're like, I'm glad he's on our side. Like, I'm glad he works on our team.
Yeah. He's a fantastic individual. I do enjoy talking to him. So I got a question for you. Do you have a book that you go to, or a book that you recommend people read, or what's your top? I know you spoke about you have a lot of different books and you get exposure to a lot of leaders who read a lot of different books, but for you personally, what's your go-to?
So I have a few, not ones you would expect though. Perfect. I'd say one is, it's an old school one, kind of, The Alchemist. Mm-hmm. And you reminded me of that today. I love The Alchemist because I read it before I joined the military, and it's very much a coming of age story, finding your place in life. And I needed that. I was looking for encouragement to join, because I am the fourth generation Air Force. It started with Army Air Corps. To me, I really wanted to serve, but I was scared to leave. I'm not going to lie. I had it made. I was living in a great neighborhood, great house. I had my family was happy, had this big happy family, all these friends. It really took a lot of courage for me to even leave. Mm-hmm. And so I was seeking this information out, this encouragement. I stumbled across that book. And you were telling a story earlier about a friend who essentially had a a tragic car accident.
Yeah.
But because of that accident, it led to a scan that found a cancerous tumor of sorts that they were able to remove in time.
Mm-hmm.
So then it kind of makes you wonder, well, was that accident like meant to happen? Was I meant to find this so I could keep going? That's pretty much the whole concept of The Alchemist. Like,
Yeah.
he's trying to get this, like, he's like a sheep herder or something. He's trying to get these animals through this valley, and everything's stopping him, like weather, illness, everything. And then by the end, he realizes each one of those things actually saved his life so that he could fulfill this grand purpose at the end.
Mm-hmm.
He sees now why those hard times happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to bring that book up just because of that story you told. I was like, that's The Alchemist.
Yeah.
I like The Way of the Peaceful Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Another coming of age book that I gravitated towards, about like discipline. How bad do you want your goal to really, truly? How good do you think you are? Are you as good as you think you are? What can you work on? It's all about like humbling yourself on your journey. I like Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I believe that was written in like the 70s.
Yeah.
That's, to me, it kind of reminds me of The Matrix. I like The Matrix with like, I know the rules, but that doesn't limit me from doing something that has never been done before. Like that's kind of the message I get from The Matrix, where Neo can break through the barriers of the rules of the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, and Jonathan Livingston Seagull is kind of that same concept. It's like, we're all just seagulls fighting for this food. Like, don't you think there's more to life than just us fighting each other for food? And he starts to like just try to see how fast he could fly. So he would like learn how to like hone his wings because he was studying eagles and how they fly, how they narrow their bodies. And all the other birds are making fun of him. They're talking trash. Like, why are you wasting energy on this stuff? And he ends up like I think he goes like another planet. It gets a bit wild. But the overall message is like, you are meant for so much more than fighting for food.
Yeah.
Like you have a much grander purpose. You have unlimited potential. Don't sell yourself short. So that's why I gravitate towards that book. And then the last one I'll mention to you is Love is Letting Go of Fear. So that book is written by a guy. He has a real unique name, Gerald Jamblowski. It's a very unique name. If you Google that title, you'll Love is Letting Go of Fear, you'll see it. But it's basically like the most simple, broken down concept on how you're torturing yourself by trying to control things you can't, how you're not loving the people that deserve all your love. It lays it out so anyone could understand like why you might not be happy or fulfilled. It writes it in like a genius way. There's even like kid cartoon style drawings that he did. Like he made it so easy for me to be like, that's why I'm torturing myself. Like, just really made things clear about your negative trains of thought or how to treat people that you really love. But he essentially narrows it down to, you're either afraid of something or you love something. Like, which one are you going to pick?
Yeah.
Because it all comes down to that, a fear or a love. I just thought that was genius.
It's like being mindful, just being in the moment. So control what you can. You can only control like your perception and your outcome.
And anything else outside of that, it's going to cause you stress. It's going to cause you anxiety.
Yeah.
Because it oftentimes doesn't work. It does sometimes. You know, you'll maneuver some things and, hey, that worked just how I wanted it. But more often than not, you can't predict what another person's going to do or think.
Exactly.
We're wild cards. And trying to control the environment, the situation, the outcomes, I mean, that's your fear and your ego.
Yeah.
And that's not sustainable on the long term.
Yeah.
You will have to switch gears at some point.
Yeah. It's like where you are doesn't define who you are.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah. That's cool. Do you have a book that you gift? Are you a gifter? Like
I have never gifted a book.
Really?
Have you seen The Economy? I'm just kidding.
Like I may send you a discount code, but I'm not sending you a book.
No, I have. I don't think I've done that. I probably should though. Yeah, if I did, I would probably gift. I'd say probably The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. I feel like anyone could read that and get something out of it, because it kind of fits with our military mindset of discipline, honing your skills, honing the basics, and really getting that down while knowing that ego back, dialing that back, not letting that steer. I think any military person could read that and learn something from it. So I probably need to gift that. Do you own it?
I do not.
Do I need to? Can I gift it to you?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I'll be your first.
You'll be
Your
the
first gift.
First one. You're getting that
Okay.
book.
All right, that sounds good.
We just got paid, right? Yeah, we
I
did.
believe
okay,
so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're getting that book.
Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Okay, well, I want to hear some of your books then.
I have a lot. I'm not a big reader just for the sake of time, so I do a lot of audiobooks. And I never thought I'd be at a point in my life, and I mean, take me back years ago, I would call myself crazy, where I can actually work out and run and listen to podcasts and books. But I rarely ever listen to music now. It's almost always because my time is so limited in the day, and I've got to, like a thirst for knowledge, but I don't have time to read and do all these things and to separate them. So I got to figure out what can I blend together. So I use my car ride. I used to do it when I was in North Carolina because it took me about 45, 50 minutes to get to work. So I just started listening to audiobooks. And
by the way, that's all I do now too.
That's it. Yeah.
Someone will gift me a book because authors love podcasts. And I will just in turn buy the audiobook.
Yeah.
I won't even read the book. I'll just listen to that audiobook. I'm like, yeah, I read it. Yeah. Because I just like you, I love doing chores with an audiobook. I love doing the dishes while listening to something, mowing the lawn while listening to something.
Absolutely.
Like that's like the best time to do it.
Yep.
So I'm right there with you.
So I have The Daily Stoic is probably a book I've gifted the most. And I just really enjoy the look. It's a daily read, about a paragraph. It applies it to life. It's really interesting, and it helps give a different look on it. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, is a classic, military classic. Although you can't work out to that one because it's very kind of Shakespearean the way it's read. So it's like the way of the warrior is to it's like this very.
You're trying to get that
very hard to run.
You're trying to get that last set of bench, and you're like, "Why am I listening to this?"
In times of strength,
this isn't helping.
And you're like, "Oh my god!" David Goggins, both of his books are just phenomenal.
I've only read the first one. I need to read the second one.
Second one's excellent. The first one I think is outstanding. I've read it and I've got it on audiobook too, and probably a few times. There's another one called The Energy Bus, which I've gifted a few times, which is a really cool book. I've played it for my kids.
Oh, wow.
And it's a very applicable book for adults or kids. It's a really easy 4-hour audiobook or something, but it's very applicable. There's Chasing Excellence by Ben Bergeron, where he was one of the more successful coaches for CrossFit game athletes, but he looks at it from more of a mindfulness standpoint on how to, like, a strong athlete has a strong mind. And overcoming your fears, and kind of like the athleticism is part of it, but it's not the majority of it. It's a lot of, gratitude and outlook and purpose and meaning and mindfulness and controlling what you can. So those were all really good aspects. The Jordan Peterson, his books are great. I don't always understand most of them. Like I can only take them and I got to listen to them for short periods of time. And then I got to like pause and because he is so dense the way he speaks. He's just like, he does not waste a line. So I'll listen to a couple minutes. I gotta be like, pause. I gotta unpack all that. So I'll just sit there in silence and run through it because I
love some of his speeches too, his clips on YouTube where I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Like he talks about chasing happiness and how people think it's rooted in money, but it's shown that like, I think it's like no more than $80,000 a year. Anything after that is not permanent happiness.
Yeah.
Like, stop looking at that. Stop trying to be rich to be happy. Like, that's not, you're doing it wrong. And like but the way he tells those stories, it's just like hits.
Yeah.
So I love his
very deep.
I love his stuff too.
And the way he talks. And there's several more I listen to, but I'll leave it at that. That's probably a good little handful to go with. And then of course there's all, the the military historical reading, like Danger Zone, About Face. Those are all really good. Any leader should be reading these kind of books because they're very impactful. They're good insight. And as much as we say, like, what was I saying? Like, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And if you listen to a lot of historical battles or strategic books, you realize that the game has not changed a lot, and you start to see things resurface, and then you start to put them all together. And it's just good for people to kind of have that kind of perspective, I believe. Definitely.
Yeah. Sometimes you think your problem's unique to you, then you realize it's happened a dozen times in the past.
Yeah, when I was talking to, it's funny, I was talking to a panel earlier, we started talking about the attributes of leadership and some of the not so great attributes of leaderships and their experience. And I had a room full of people, different AFSCs, all different career fields, all over the Air Force, and all of them had the same views. Somebody'd say, like, I view this as not a good leadership quality, and people nod. Some people say this is a good leadership quality, and people nod. And I'm like, look at this. Like, we all work in different places. We all agree what good leadership should be and what good attributes people should have. And it really was interesting because you notice the whole temperature of the room turned, because now it's just like one group of people instead of a room full of people with different AFSCs. So it was like that quick of just like, oh, really? You guys deal with that too, huh? It's like, yeah, we're all people.
Right. When I worked in Honor Guard, I got to do that every day because you got folks from all over the base.
Yep.
So that's a great eye-opening talks that you have in that setting.
What an honor! It sounds funny. What an honor thing to do is be able to do Honor Guard. Like, when we send people out for it to do the augmentee, they come back and say it was some of the most valuable experiences they've had.
Definitely.
Of being able to do that. So that's a awesome opportunity you had.
It is. It's I got to the point in my life where I wanted to do something most people couldn't do. I wanted to serve in a truly unique, purposeful capacity. And so, honestly, Honor Guard's like the last thing I normally would sign up for. Like, that's a hard emotional thing to do. I absorb emotions, right? Like all the movements, I'm not naturally good at like that either.
I have no rhythm.
Right. So it's like I was walking into like everything I'm not great at, but at my core, I wanted so badly to do something to truly serve and know I made a difference.
Yeah.
And that's where I found it. Especially the active duty funerals, which we did during my time, 7. It all depends on their home of record where they're going to get buried. So they could pass away across the world, but their home of record was Missouri, which there's a lot of veterans. Mm-hmm. And so you're doing that active duty service. They just pop up. And I feel so much emotion, so much so that like when I would even hear one's coming, I would get emotional because I know what's going to happen. I know how it's going to look, how it's going to feel. I start preparing myself immediately upon notification, start training right away for it. Because I know it's going to be challenging for everyone there. So we're going to have to rely on those basics to get through it.
Yeah. And it's so impactful for the family. I mean, it's such a special moment.
It is. You're there for them in a way no one else can be there for. It's so unique. It's so much pride that they'll carry with that flag, forever. It's a powerful symbol. The whole thing is a powerful symbol. Mm-hmm. Every movement, every firing party, every flag fold it's all a powerful testament to honor that person. So yeah, it was life-changing for sure.
I took my son to the Honor Guard graduation that we had here, and they do the ceremony every time there's graduating. He thought it was amazing. And I was like, because I'm really trying to expose them more since I've been gone so much throughout my career. Try to bring him to Chief Recognition Ceremony. I brought him to the Air Force Ball. I bring him to I try to bring him to a lot of these things. I brought him to the Honor Guard. He was like, that was insane. He's like, that was so cool. Except I forgot to tell him about the firing, that they actually used blanks. And so watching him jump when they actually capped off that round was pretty funny. I was like, yeah,
it scares the hell out of you.
I told you they're going to shoot. He's like, I didn't know it was going to be that loud, Dad.
So I'll tell you the craziest, loud one I've ever encountered was, we had someone from Whiteman pass away, and we were like, are we going to have honors here, or are we going to do the honors at his place of burial, which was not Missouri. The family opted to do it at Whiteman because so many people cared about this person. They want to be a part of it.
Really cool.
And that was one of the very few, it kind of hit me in that moment, like the base doesn't see us, right? Like everybody outside the base sees it, but everyone here doesn't see us do honors, right? Because the funerals are off base and for civilians.
Yeah.
So this was one of the rare times that like a full active duty group were witnessing these honors,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's kind of a rare thing. But it was in a hangar, and when those rifles went off, you could hear it echo all the way down the flight line. I mean, powerful.
Yeah.
That's usually, if anyone's holding on to their emotions, that startle is when it all comes out. It's just something I've noticed.
Yeah. Very impactful.
It makes you jump for a split second.
Yeah.
So if you were holding anything in, like it's out.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to let it all out at that point.
Yeah, they're really special ceremonies.
For sure. All right. So looking around the room, you clearly have done amazing things, very unique things like we were discussing. Is there any particular story, that you're allowed to share that was a trying time for you, or something that took a lot of grit on your behalf to get through?
Oh, there's plenty. If I can think of, I don't know, we may need to come back to that. I'll think of something. I definitely, anybody who knows me is I'm rarely ever, at a loss for words.
Right.
Even when I always tell people like how much time, if they, if I go somewhere and speak, I'm like, how much time do I have? Okay, you gotta give me like a 5 minutes because I'll just keep going. So we're like, all right, like wrap it up. But I'll have to come back to it. There's definitely a lot, and I just have to think of one that would apply. So
yeah, and
I'm not trying to avoid the question.
Oh no, it's all good. If
don't want to babble.
If it's something that you don't want to share too, by all means, don't want to put you in a bad spot.
No, no, not at all. No, there's definitely a lot, but they all contributed to growth. Is the good and bad, and they all contribute to who you are. You're kind of like a product of everything you've experienced. You're just kind of wrapped up in one concentrated can of you, right? And that's all made up of elements that you've experienced and people you've had interactions with, and good, bad, and different, and everything in between has created who you are.
That's why I love like offices like most chiefs' offices usually are. They tell a story. So those pieces of what you're talking about are throughout this room. Mm-hmm. Each coin, like I can even see a 4-star general coin from here. Mm-hmm. There's a story behind that. Yeah, each coin, each going away gift, each certification. I mean, you had a knife on the wall right there. Like, what is that? I don't know.
So a knife, it's a tradition within some of the places that I went with, and the reason for the knife is, the story goes back, is the knife is symbolic, and it's one of the most reliable and dependable pieces of a battlefield kit. It's also your last line of defense. So it's symbolic of like leadership, reliability, servant defense, because it's sharp, it's true, it's straight, highly effective. It's your last line of defense. And in many, many combats throughout history, including anywhere from the Battle of Mogadishu to trench warfare in World War II to hand-to-hand combat in Vietnam, it's been used and it's been highly effective. And so it's a very important piece of anybody's kit. And so it's really symbolic of a lot of units. You get one of the ones I really enjoy. I've got to, I was deployed with an overseas unit, a British unit, and they gave me a knife, which I really cherished. And they did a little inscription on it. That's the one behind you there. But I'm kind of like an old school sucker. Like I like patches and coins, and not arbitrary ones, but I really like when somebody, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be like, I don't even care. But somebody thought enough to think like, hey, I want you to have a piece of this.
Right.
And give it, and like those always mean a lot to me. And so that's why I don't have many coins, but all the ones that I do display mean a lot to me. And it's because they were given to me in real sincerity. And or even done some joint exercises where somebody's giving me like their patch. And they're like, hey, like, thanks for everything you did. And they give me a patch. I'm like, just patch right off their arm. But to me, it means so much, you know. Definitely. And so I really appreciate that. So that's why I try and, you know, I like that stuff around me because it kind of, you know, keeps my head in the game of what's going on. It's like General McChrystal, like when he was I'm not comparing myself to General McChrystal by any means, but he had this story that I thought was interesting. When he was in Afghanistan, he had a nail on the wall, which he hung his kid on, and he had one picture of his family. And he said that was it. He didn't keep anything else because he's like, I wanted to be focused on the war all the time because I was deployed. I had people under my command, and I wanted to make sure my focus was there. And so I thought that was interesting. So, you know, a lot of this stuff just helps keep focus of like what we're doing. We work for everybody around us, and we need to make sure that, you know, everybody's taken care of.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a good perspective to have, a good time to, you know, reflect on your experiences, everything you've been through. It probably grounds you, you know, keeps you, you know, sharp like that knife up there. Which
it's already rubbing off.
I had no idea it was that symbolic, but just as you were explaining it, I was like, that's actually super powerful.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. And then you have one behind me here that was, you know, from a foreign military. That's even more impactful, right? Because that's like you impressed another country's team at that point, you know, with however you earned that. That's amazing.
Or maybe I was just funny.
You could have been funny.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe they felt sorry for. I don't know. Whatever it was, I got the knife. I was pretty happy.
That's how I got hired as that exec. Just made my commander laugh.
That's it.
That's how I got hired.
I think that's how I got most of my promotions.
Right. Yeah, a lot of joy in making someone laugh. It actually is a good approach.
Yeah.
Hey, you said having fun was one of your tenets, right?
Yes.
There you go.
If you're not having fun, then what are you doing?
Right.
You know, you got to appreciate what you're doing. You got to understand we're a very unique service. There less than 1% of the world is in the armed services, and you know, we need to cherish that. We think it's really big because it's our entire life. We look everywhere and we see people in uniform, but really, if you draw out that perspective and look at 330 million people in the United States and how many are serving in the DoD, I mean, it's a fraction. Right. And so it's a very unique set. So if you're not having fun doing that and not happy where you are, like you should either reevaluate what you're doing or maybe just change your perspective, because what anybody's doing in the military is really special, no matter what you're doing, because nobody can do what you do. Right. It doesn't matter what your career field. People are like, oh, all I do is this. Well, oh yeah, well, nobody else can do that. I can't do it. So I need you to do it, you know? And that's a lot of I think it's a lot of the humility and the humbleness that you get from working with like small teams. Because small teams, you're never going to be the most accurate shooter. You're not going to be the biggest stud at PT. You're not going to be the smartest. Like there's always some sort of variance that keeps you humble. And you need everybody on that team to do their job. And they're, you know, especially in those environments, they're not afraid to tell you. They're in a very supportive way is like, I need you to do your job because I can't do your job. So you need to do it. And I need to be able to rely on you, and I don't have to think about it. So you can't just phone it in every day. You got to go in, and we say like every day is a job interview. And we'd have a badge that would get into our unit. And if you came back from a deployment or a TDY and you're in the parking lot, you're walking in, and you run into one of your buddies, they're like, how'd it go? And you're like, you'd scan your badge and it'd go green and the door would open. You're like, I guess it was okay. I still have a job.
They didn't turn it off yet.
Yeah.
I like that. That's funny. All right, believe it or not, we've been talking for an hour and 12 minutes. Does it feel like that?
No.
It goes by pretty fast, doesn't it?
Yeah. It was really fun. I always enjoy talking to you. So this
I love
is like
talking
just
to you
another
too.
Conversation, and I really enjoy it. Of course, we're in headphones, but it still feels like we're just having a normal conversation, which I think that's what this long form is supposed to be. But I really enjoy it.
Absolutely. So as we, you know, come to an end here, a closing here, is there any sort of topic, story, or final thought that you want to make sure we cover before we cut out of here?
The one thing I want to touch on is that I think we get too wrapped up in maybe somebody else will do it, or it's not my job, or, you know, nobody's going to listen to me because I'm only 20, or I'm only 25, or I'm only a staff sergeant, or I'm only a tech sergeant. And that's not the way we work. I mean, we need to understand that this family needs everybody to make this work, and everybody matters. And I don't mean that like, you know, fluffy language or anything, but you look at in 1776, the Declaration of Independence, John Adams was 18 years old.
Oh, wow. I didn't know he was 18 years old.
George Washington was 44.
Wow.
I mean,
that's
Paul Revere
I'm
was
39, so that's kind of hard to wrap
Paul
my head
Revere was
around.
41 years old
Wow.
when they wrote. So our founding fathers were probably an average age of like 25, 28 years old. If you could look up how old were the founding fathers, you'd be stunned at how old they were. And what we do, the decisions we make and how we do things makes a difference. Like we put the Tuskegee Airmen in battle, a unit of black pilots in a battle 20 years before we ended segregation in America.
That is
That
wild.
was 1942. The Segregation Act was 1964.
Wow.
We put people in the battle. We put a female, and they said, "Oh, well, you know, that's the way it's always been. You know, we're not going to do it." But we changed that. You know, they said we couldn't put women in the combat. We flew female pilots in 1993, and they said you'll never make that happen. It's the way it's always been done. We put females in combat in 2000. Oh God, I think 2006, 2009. We put females in combat. They said it would never happen. We created Space Force. Like, we make things happen. And these didn't happen from some general sitting behind a desk who says, "Hey, you know, it's a good idea." It came from younger people who said, "Hey, like, we need to reframe the way we think." And leaders listened, and then they made it happen. So there's been huge seismic changes. And when we talked about earlier, from the time we created a plane, the Wright brothers created a plane, to the time we had one in battle was 7 years, 8 years, 1901, and then 1909, we were flying them in aerial combat. You know, it's like, we've done amazing things, and we need not forget about that. Not to go down too far to like the history lane, but it's like, sometimes people go like, "Oh, it's really no, it's not complicated. It's really simple." Like,
And it's still going.
yes,
Like, we like to think it's like not us. Oh, that's the past. That's history. We're writing it today.
yes,
There's huge things happening in our lives today. You and I went through 9/11. That's why a lot of us joined or stayed in. We continue to make things better, to break that glass ceiling, to do what was impossible. It's still going. It's still happening today.
You constantly improve your foxhole, and you're not going to change the entire world in one sitting, but you move it a little bit further. Like, to reference McChrystal again, they said, "What's the ideal chessboard for you? If you had the battlefield was a chessboard, how would you maneuver the pieces?" And he said, "The pieces would communicate with each other and maneuver."
Oh,
That's
wow.
the ideal chessboard, not me controlling them, but their intercommunication and versatility and adaptation amongst each other, and communicating with the pieces on the board and moving on their own.
Which that was the concept from the Civil War.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
I mean, you're eligible to go to that course. There's a Chiefs. One of the many, cool opportunities that you could do is there. You could actually go to the battlefield and learn all about the history of the Civil War and how that ties to combat today. But they were the reason they won the war was because they realized, like, hey, sending a guy on horseback to ask for permission, it's not working. Because that's how it was.
It takes forever.
It was like very regimented. Like, you do not do anything unless you ask me, and then I ask my boss. Like, it was very regimented. And in the Civil War, that's where it changed, where they granted autonomy, trust. I need you to go do this. I trust you, and then report back to me. And they started approaching it that way.
Yeah.
They started communicating more. They started empowering each other more. A lot of those lessons from that are applied today.
That probably set the model for the decentralized execution.
Exactly. I think
So
that's
one of the
literally how they explained it.
See, it rhymes. It doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes.
Right. It's still valuable to this very day. We do it because we've seen it done before. And I think it's very eye opening to know where a lot of those concepts originated, and they haven't changed. It's the communication still valuable. Empowering people still works.
Guess what? It didn't break. It still works. Like the world didn't burn. Like we made things better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. I'll have to find out about that course. Thanks for bringing that up with me. I'll look into that a little more. I really find that interesting.
You would love it, especially like listening to books. You like history. You like leadership philosophy. Like this is your bread and butter.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I want to get some more information on that, and I can.
If you want to take a PA guide to document it with you,
I think that'd be great.
Let me know.
Hey, if we find a way to sail that one through, constantly improving our foxhole, develops you, develops me, puts us out there together. I think it's good. I think we figured out the narrative.
We did. We got a plan. We got a way forward. Which, by the way, AI is getting crazy. Not to go down a rabbit hole, but I use a program called Otter.ai to give me transcripts, because then I can take those transcripts and do a lot with the transcript. Like I can make articles out of them. But recently it just incorporated an AI where there's a section that says follow-ups.
Really?
So like exactly what I just said to you, hey, we should do this. It would be like, it would give me a checklist of what I need to follow up with you on based on this talk. Wow. And it would list it out. Tell me that's not wild.
I love it. As much as I'm cautious about AI, I'm excited about it too, because it's so darn convenient sometimes. Like some of the things you're just like, I'm really having a tough time hating this thing. Like this is pretty
I mean,
good.
That's the balance though. That's when it works. When you have the balance where you meet it, halfway, not give it the reins.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you meet it halfway, that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah. So if the chess pieces communicate and move, but you still own the chessboard.
Right. And they still follow up with you.
Yes.
They're still trust but verify.
Yes. Trust but verify. Very valuable piece of advice right there.
I'm going to put that on a t-shirt. I'm going to just, I stopped making shirts a while ago, but I need to like bring it back and put like really old school military terms on them. Yeah. I think that would be
old school shirts are where it's at.
Yeah. I would love that. All right, Chief. Did we cover everything you want to talk about, or is there any last?
We did. No, of course, I can keep going on this, but I really enjoyed talking with you and getting a chance to speak with you. I love your podcast. I love what you do.
Thank you.
And you have a great opportunity to talk to a lot of people, and I learn a lot from it. And you're in a very unique position where you get to extract all this information from people that I think a lot of people don't have access to, and you're able, by position and how big your podcast is getting, that you're able to get this information out there. And leaders are constantly looking at reasons, like we spoke about General Garrity there earlier, about how do we get this information out to people, and you're the conduit to doing that, and you're doing a great job with it. And
Thank you.
I'm really honored to be able to have a chance to sit down and talk with you. And of course, I always love talking with you. And yeah, you're doing great things.
I appreciate
it. We really appreciate you. And I'm not the only one saying that. I'm sure there's a ton of people out there who appreciate it and who are listening to you.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. And Chief, what I love about you is that, you have this tremendous experience, right? You've clearly been through a lot of things. And you look tough. I'm just gonna be honest. Like, you don't look like the average medic. You look tough. But when we sit down and we get to know you, like you're so wise, you're so kind and loving to people, that we talked about General Garrity checking like all those leadership boxes. I feel that same way about you.
That's really nice. Thank you very much. I'm going to carry that with me the rest of the day. It's going to put fuel in my fire.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I appreciate that. That's
you're very unique. You're exceptional. And anyone who works for you, gets to work with you, that's a blessing for us. So I wanted to thank you for being you, for showing up for us every day the way you do, and for coming on the HeroFront podcast and spending time with this audience. So I just want to thank you personally for that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's been an honor.
Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the very end. This was the hero's journey of Chief Jason Weiss, and we're out.